Well, hello and welcome everyone. Laura Brandenburg here with Bridging the Gap, and I'm so excited to be here with you today and to be sharing with you today. If you are hearing me, if you can go ahead and just let me know in the chat, give me an emoji or a thumbs up or a hello, let me know where you're joining from. That would also be amazing. It's always just great to know that the recording is for sure working. I think I can see it on my other screen, but it's great to know for sure. Okay, so while we get started, let me just go ahead. I'm going to share my screen because we actually have slides today. A lot of times I do LinkedIn Lives very informally, but present some slides, as well as I'm going to show you some demos of Chat GPT and how to use some of the prompts in our prompt library to achieve more success in your business analysis career. So that is really what we are here for today, is to talk about prompt engineering for business analysts. All right, Tishar, thank you. It always just takes like a minute for LinkedIn. It's the most awkward first minute of any presentation. So thank you, Tishar. Thumbs up. Great to see you, Nick. Love you and your team. Okay, so many comments coming in. We've got people from Germany, South Africa, all different kinds of states in the United States, Vancouver, Canada, Arizona. Wonderful, wonderful. So great. UK, didn't mean to overlook you, Maria. All right, so great to have you all here. As always, I love having interaction in the chat. So if you have a question, if you want to follow up on something, feel free to get those comments in and I will pay attention as best I can. And I'll always do a call for like reposting at the end as well. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. Looks like we are truly, truly live. All right, so just a bit about me. If you are new to me, I would also love to know that as well. I often feel like I've met all the people in business analysis, and then there's like so many more people. So if this is your first time being part of a Bridging the Gap event or hearing me speak, I would love to know that. Or if you have been around for a while, it's always great to know that as well. But for those of you who might be new to me, I'm Laura Brandenburg. I'm the founder and CEO of Bridging the Gap. We are an online education provider specifically for training for business analysts, specifically for really practical, real world next step skills that take you from kind of being unclear about what business analysis is to being really focused and confident and a polished, true business analyst. So that's what we do here at Bridging the Gap. I've been a business analyst for over 20 years in a variety of capacities. I was on a variety of different kinds of software projects. I did consulting. I moved into a hiring manager role, managing a BA, project management, and QA team for a while. I am currently focusing on training. I've done some career coaching. So I've seen business analysis from multiple perspectives. From being in the role of business analyst, managing the role of business analyst, consulting in the role of business analysis, right? So I try to bring all those perspectives together into my work and what I offer here with you. I am the author of How to Start a Business Analyst Career, and I'm super excited about my forthcoming book called The Value Driven Business Analyst. I got to get used to saying that. It's a new title, which is I'm expecting to start pre-orders in late June and publish in July. So we are in the final stages of that and super excited about that. I'm also the creator of the Business Analyst Blueprint framework and training program. That's our main offering. We also offer some templates and toolkits and other ways to help you in your professional career development on our website at bridgingthegap.com. But overall, my mission is really to empower business analysts to amplify their impact and thrive in their or your careers, right? I want you to feel more confident, more empowered, more able to do the value creating work that is so critical for business analysis to thrive and for each of us to thrive individually, but also collectively to rise and elevate the profession. Great to see you here, Thea. And Latitha, yes, this session will be recorded. LinkedIn captures a recording for us. We're also streaming to our YouTube channel, and YouTube captures a recording for us as well. So we will, if you are on our email list, we will share a link with an email or an email link to that tomorrow. All right. So great to see so many names. So let's dive into the core content. What I want to share with you today is this 3-step prompt engineering process. It's how I think when I go ahead to do a prompt. And then I'm going to show you some examples. So I'm going to go into a little bit of depth around the kind of the mindset of prompting. And then I will show you some examples that you can use. And then I will also show you our prompt library that we just added to the Business Analyst Blueprint training program. So you can get a glimpse of what that's like. And if you would like the full prompt library, obviously it's eligible or it's available to you if you join the full program. But I want to also make sure you leave here with a lot of great content, a lot of great frameworks, a lot of great mindsets to be engineering your own prompts as well. So the 3-step process that I think about, or really the mindset, what is your goal with AI? Like, what are you trying to do when you sit down and start a prompt, right? So this is the same thing. We're always asking our stakeholders, why is this important? What is your goal? What are we trying to accomplish? And I think it's easy because AI is so conversational that we kind of forget. We really need to sit down with a clear intention, a clear goal, a clear purpose, what we're trying to achieve. And there are some things that AI is really great at and some things it's not. And we'll talk about those. And then you want to think about what context can you provide to make AI be successful. So what do you know that AI needs to know? And thinking about that from a sharing of context. As business analysts, we share context with the technical team, with the business team. We're always like the sharers, the spreaders of information, making sure that everyone's on the same page. We need to use that skill and flow that skill into how we work with AI as well. And then the third piece is really to, receive what AI has to generate for you, but to refine it. Very often, the first time I do a prompt, it doesn't get what I expect, but it helps me realize what I need to train it to do so that I get a better response the next time. So we'll talk about some of that refinement process. I will say there's a second approach to prompt engineering, which is to put a lot of time into engineering a perfect prompt so that refinement step becomes unnecessary. And I think as we're thinking about how we do this in our businesses to leverage AI in a business process for our businesses where much more will be automated, we definitely need to be thinking more clearly about those prompts. But as we're just learning the skill and start of seeing what can AI do and what can it do, what gaps does it need to be filled, I think it's much an easier way to get started to provide as much context as we think is reasonable up front and then refine, and we'll start to learn the capabilities and the boundaries. And so that's really a big part of the approach I teach is more iterative and refining. And you'll see we have these conversation threads that go on and on, right? Because I'm constantly in conversation with AI versus engineering a very great prompt up front and getting a perfect result. So 2 different strategies. There's no necessarily right or wrong. I just want to be clear what my approach is. Okay. Mark Jones, great. I'm so glad you shared your connection. And feel free, that's a great reminder for me too. If anybody, I love connecting with you all. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn as well, feel free to connect with Mark Jones. But also if you have questions after this or any questions about the training or anything else we offer, feel free to reach out about that as well. Okay, so let's go into step 1. And again, I'm going to kind of share these as mindsets, and then I'll show you some examples. So step 1 is to define your goal. What are you actually trying to achieve? So yesterday, Thea and I both were actually on a call with Ryan Fulster, and he was sharing this metaphor of AI being like a super new team member that needs a lot of oversight. It's similar to what I have been thinking about, which I like to think of AI as like a smart teenager or a high schooler, right? That has some theoretical knowledge of business analysis, but hasn't really applied it. Because AI's probably read all the books, right? It's definitely consumed all of the content, Bridging the Gap and many other websites for business analysis, as well as many other information sources about other domains and topics. But it needs to but we need to make sure that what's in those books makes sense for our context, and we need to direct it how to use that knowledge. So what is our goal and what is reasonable to expect? So some of the things that AI is really good at today would be drafting a deliverable, not necessarily creating your final perfect deliverable, but getting you to a 60, 70, maybe even 80% draft. Definitely something that you could start to review with stakeholders. But again, it might need some refinement. Updating a deliverable. So I'll show you how you can actually get it to update a deliverable that you feel like is a really good framework, and it could do some updates for you. Really great at identifying questions, maybe too many questions, right? So if you're ever lost with questions to ask, AI can be a great tool to help you identify questions to ask your stakeholders. It can help you find opportunities to optimize and improve a process, a software feature, or product. It can also help you do research. So, one of the big pain points in our profession is when we are new to a team, new to a domain, new to an industry, new to a software product that we're trying to implement, right? And we feel like the least knowledgeable person in the room, which is a great place to be as a BA because that's where we get to stretch our skills, we get to learn new things, we get to really rely on our business analysis skills. But there is that initial learning curve of learning a domain, and AI can really help with research around that, looking up acronyms, kind of giving you an overview of a domain or an area or even a software system. And it can also help you summarize. So when we're talking about summarize here, pull out information from a big detailed document. So something like putting in a regulation and pulling out the changes, or creating an executive summary of a detailed report. It is really good at taking like massive amounts of information and summarizing for you. A few of the things not listed here: creation of test data, creation of any sort of like data creation type thing. And I'll show you a bunch in the prompt library as well, because we have some other examples. Okay. And forgot he says that's a great analogy. Thank you. Assuming you're talking about the high schooler or maybe the new team member. One thing to be clear on when it comes to AI, though, as well, is it's not going to give you the same answer every time. So I think, we're used to, in our traditional world of business analysis, when we code software systems, very conditional logic, right? If this happens, then this happens. So AI is going to be different. It's not going to give you the same output. If you put that same regulation in 2 or 3 different times or into 2 or 3 different tools, you're going to get something different. And this is why at this point, I think we're best in a refine and iterate type workflow, because there's always going to be some human component to it. And over time, though, is what I think we will start to see, is that AI can start to make some interim decisions, maybe on behalf of the business, maybe allow for some more fluid and flexible decision making. And it's going to start to change the nature of how we code systems, but also how we think about business processes, right? So if the machine or the technology can make some decisions, but also needs some boundaries around it for when it's allowed to make those decisions and when some human intervention is required. It's a very different business process than how we code processes today. So that's sort of what's coming, but the skill set I think we can focus on right now to prepare ourselves to get there is this kind of prompt engineering. Okay, so step 2, and we're still just looking at the mindset, and then I'm going to show some practical examples that will pull this all together. So step 2 is to provide some context. How can you train AI to get the result you want? What would you tell that really smart high school student if you wanted them to do what you want AI to do? So that is, and that's what we want to think about here, is how would we train like a smart, intelligent being? So one of the things I've found really amplifies the results very quickly is to provide an annotated template. So you can provide a template which gives the structure. That's the first starting point. But when you have an annotated template that actually describes what goes into each section of the template, it's like training. And I developed a lot of annotated templates that we use as part of our training. It's part of what we also offer as digital downloads and Bridging the Gap, right? And so the goal was to actually train other business analysts through those annotations. And now we're using those to train AI, which is kind of a fun unfolding. So that's, thinking about your templates and how you can make those trainable materials for AI. I will say you could also use examples. I have found it difficult though, when you try to train AI with an example, it has trouble still distilling the structure of the template, the document, from the content. And so still there's going to be some of that content of whatever that example was that could bleed into whatever the thing you're asking it to create is, which may or may not be relevant to your project. So I'm sure there's some ways to really prompt around that, but I feel like it's easier to just create an annotated template as part of the training. Then you want to think about background information. So do you have meeting notes, transcripts, project documentation? What can you provide as context, right? What are the key steps of the process? What are the business objectives? We had a question come in advance about how can we ensure that what AI creates links to the business objectives for our company. And the way we do that is by telling AI what the business objectives are. We don't want it to make assumptions. It's going to make some great assumptions about maybe what your company or your project is all about. But we don't want it to make assumptions. We want to guide it. And so that is the piece that's still going to be very important from a business analysis perspective, that we know, why are we doing this project? What are we trying to achieve? What's the goal of this prompt? But also, what's the context of the bigger picture of the project? If we don't know the business objectives, we can ask AI to suggest some, but that we would still want to validate that with a business stakeholder, right? Okay. And then the third part of context is being very specific with your question or request. So what specifically do you want AI to do? Like, what task would you put in the project management tool for your junior person? And how clearly can you describe that so that you get exactly what you want? All right. So for step one, know your goal, make sure it's a proper goal for AI. Step two, provide context, be really specific about your prompt. And then step three is evaluating the result and refine the output or the prompt. So did you get what you expect? So look at that prompt. I had an example. So another challenge, there's actually two things I want to say. So one, on the past slide, I forgot to mention, obviously you only want to share the information that you are allowed to share within your company. And so there's taking into account the security needs, what's allowable to share is really important. You can still do things like research without sharing company proprietary information, but for uploading meeting notes, for sharing, project documentation, you probably are going to need to be in some sort of company specific GPT. Not all companies have access to those yet, but I keep hearing new examples every day of companies that have those. So be on the lookout for your organization creating some sort of GPT that's a secure system where you can start to interact with more deliverables. In the meantime, use Chat GPT or other publicly available tools in ways that are appropriate where you don't have to share that information. But even if you can't, this is what prompted me. I wanted to share, we are going to London in June. I'm taking it's our first international trip as a family. And, we had one of my daughters printed out a list of all the things that we could possibly do. And everybody highlighted a couple of things that they wanted to do. I was like, gosh, how do I turn this into a 5-day itinerary to make the most of our time in London and to take into account kind of other things that we had already scheduled and booked in? And this is actually a great thing to feed into Chat GPT, right? So I took, the days we were going to be there, the events we wanted to do, gave that to Chat GPT and asked it to create a sample itinerary. And it's the first time I ever had the tool come back and give me a set of questions, and it had like 5 or 6 questions for me about like what we were doing. And one of them was like, "Are you going to eat?" And I'm like, "Of course we're going to eat." So it took, once I answered all those questions, it actually took 10 to 15 minutes to give the result, which I've also rarely had it do. But one thing it was doing that I didn't ask for was actually going out and researching all the places that we might eat along the way that were near the itinerary that it suggested. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, no wonder it was so complex, right? And so then I said, as I was asking for refinements, like, we don't need the restaurants at this point. Please just focus on like the activities that we're going to be doing, and we'll fill that detail in later. So you can then revise it or ask it to streamline it. So it took this huge agenda that had all these restaurant recommendations and streamlined it into like a 5-day agenda with the 3 or 4 things that we might try to do each day. So that would be an example of refining it. You could also just take what it gave and use that output as a draft and do your own refinement. Like there's a point of diminishing returns when it makes sense to like, it's just easier for me to do the update than to try to train AI to do the update, right? So you want to take into that account that cost benefit of over engineering. And then finally, sometimes you can go back and just refine the prompt to be more specific as well, or to share more, or share more context. And Priya says, let me see, we did that on a recent vacation too, and it gave us a fantastic plan of action. Yeah, so if you're looking for a way, if your company does not yet have a Chat GPT or a internal use of AI, it's a great way to practice the skill set. Okay. Grady says you can also try Notebook LLM by Google. It will only look up the resources you provide. Your sources are not used to train the model. At least that's what they say. Yes. Yes. Okay. All right. So, okay. So, no matter where you are at, one thing I want to just share from a mindset perspective before we jump into the actual demo is that your BA, your business analysis skills and fundamentals are still going to help you thrive, right? So, it's so uh, compelling or feels logical that when things are new, we have this tendency to like throw out everything we thought we knew. Like for those of us who live through the agile transformations, right? Like who threw out all their great analysis techniques and like, oh, we just need to figure out user stories now. Like I did that for the beginning of one project before I realized that I was running in circles with this like huge list of user stories and couldn't see the big picture, and went back to process flows and use cases and still created user stories, right? So we have this tendency, I think, to throw out what we thought we knew because everything's different. And it's very present in AI. Like, oh, we don't need business analysis because AI is going to figure it out. Like, that's actually the reverse is true. We need more business analysis because the opportunities unleashed by AI are so tremendous. We need to make sure they're actually delivering business value. And so, similarly, if AI is really that junior team member or smart high school student, what would you do if you were asking them to create something? You would review it, you would refine it, you would give them feedback, right? You would do some retraining. And so, what mindset and skill set do you need to do that? You need to know what a good quality output looks like. And you also need to be in conversation with the business. So, all of these perspectives that we offer, this is the way the blueprint is the way we categorize the business analysis skills within Bridging the Gap. So looking at the business perspective or the process, the software level, the data or information level, and having a framework that goes from beginning to end. One, this is all going to be covered in my upcoming book, The Value Driven Business Analyst, or mostly around the framework. But it's also like the fundamental skills that you still need to know exactly what good output looks like and to make sure that all of that is aligned with the business. So none of that goes away in our current world is really what I wanted you to take from this slide. All right. And so now, and Bragati says exactly, Agile really locked business analysis in the box. We are breaking down that box. This is the time, and AI can actually, I think, help us do that. Okay. Mark says, what about defining some measures of accuracy or effectiveness that you can evaluate the response against? Yeah, so for sure, if you have a rubric that you would use to evaluate a deliverable, that would be a great thing you could use with AI. You could also just upload that AI into AI to help train it, right? So you can use those expectations to help train AI and let AI know what a good result looks like. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing this screen and share a different screen here. Actually, yeah. Okay, so I promised to show you what this looks like in Chat GPT. Actually, as I do that, I'm gonna, StreamYard's a little wonky for this. Let me just go ahead, share the whole window. Okay, so this is Chat GPT. You can use this sort of prompt with any sort of generative AI tool that works similarly to Chat GPT. So there's nothing about what I'm sharing here that is necessarily specific. It's just the tool that I've trained the most, and so I have the most familiarity with and knows me the most at this point. So when I talked about, remember what am I trying to do? In this case, my goal was to get a draft of a use case without having to write it myself. The context that I can provide was our use case template. So I'm going to go ahead and show that to you too. So our use case template is an annotated template. So all like these dark blue sections are the sections that I would expect it to create. The light blue text is the directions. So this is what I would expect, I would train UI or expect to have in this section. So this is a free template on Bridging the Gap. So if you want to download it and use it to train AI for yourself as well, you could definitely do that. I'm going to share a link to that in the chat. While you get a chance to read this prompt a little bit more. Okay. Let's see myself so that I don't hear myself talking. Okay. So then if you look at the template or the prompt here, we have using the template and instructions provided in the attachment. Can you create a use case for the registration process for our live virtual event? Key steps include, I just provided 2 steps here. Registrants can, so then a business rule, registrants could be new to Bridging the Gap or already part of our email list. And then please identify any alternate or exception flows. So you look here at what's been created, has the brief description with the starts when, ends when statement that I'm a big proponent of. It has a list of actors, has a list of preconditions, and has a flow or a path that's much more detailed than what I gave it. And then it has a list of alternative and exception flows, post conditions, some business rules. So I looked at this and I was like, well, this is close, but I also wanted to add a double opt-in process. I wanted in step 3, how did it handle step 3? Oh, right. This is one of my pet peeves about use cases is that it had an if then statement in the here instead of pulling that out as an alternate flow. So I directed it to break that out as an alternate flow. And then our template, we've had over the years, there's been discussions about whether alternates and exceptions should be one section or 2. The template I uploaded happened to have it together, and I often will prefer it apart. So I asked it to break those apart into 2 separate sections. So what we did here, the first thing, we had it draft, right? So we went through the goal, what context can I provide? AI created a draft, and then now I'm helping it refine. So it gave me a new use case with those requirements, and it took that into account. And then at this point, I'm like, yeah, this is probably pretty good at this point. I would rather just do the edits, right? Versus having it also do the edits. But then I was like, I could actually, now that AI understands this process that I'm trying to put in place, it also could provide provide improvements. So I have here, can you provide suggestions for improving the event registration process and make it easier for people to register? So here we've got all kinds of different ideas that I could consider. So this is great. These would be ideas you could take to your stakeholders. You might want to vet them first of how they work with your technology. You could improve this. We have some prompts in the blueprint around this. You could improve this prompt by giving it any constraints of your technical system or telling it what technical systems you're using and asking it to take into account what it knows about those capabilities. If you can upload it, you could upload like system documentation that would help it maybe find some capabilities to use as well, right? So that's the kind of context that you can provide that's going to help you go from standard generic answers to even better answers. So that's one example there of a prompt. Just a second. And let me go back. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute and just see what we have here in the chat. So Mark says being able to use LLMs to create prototype and even functioning demos of designs, user stories, features is game changing. Yeah, for me, that's like my next learning curve. So I have heard about like for a while, like until recently, I think the capabilities around visual modeling and these demos were not very well put together. But this is sort of the next thing. So once you learn how to use prompts to generate text, now how could we say have AI actually create a prototype of this process so that a business user can walk through it, even if it's not final code. And that's sounding like it's becoming easier and easier to do. So thank you for bringing that in, Mark. And Pragati says that's a fantastic follow-up. Thank you. All right. So any questions about the prompts or the example? Anything that I covered so far that you'd like to cover? Jatine says, we are waiting for the magic now. I hope that that was the magic. I have others that I can share if you'd like as well. All right. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and just show you a couple of prompts from our prompt library. Oh, I did not share my screen again, so let me go ahead and do that. Okay, I think you should be seeing the prompt library now. So again, this is part of our paid program, the Business Analyst Blueprint training program. But I wanted to show you some of the other examples and kind of to Pragati's point about the follow-up, that's one of the things that we've included as well. So the library is organized in by the 4 modules of the blueprint. So we have the BA Essentials Masterclass, which is this 8-step business analysis process framework down below. We have some general topics like around meetings and issues and surveys. We have then our business process analysis module, our use cases and wireframes module, and our data modeling module. We have prompts along all of those modules. So again, like the drafted use case was one that we looked at, and I showed you in Chat GPT itself. Let's look at something different. How about business objectives, since that question came up? Okay, so here, so inside each of these prompts, what we have is a template. So in this case, what is the template? What is what I would suggest? And inside the template, of course, there are placeholders for you to provide your business specific information. So the business sponsor in the role name, that's a quick tip we've seen as people were testing the prompts here. They saw great results by, even if you don't share a sponsor name, or Chat AI is probably not going to make much of that name. What is the person's role? And using that as context, important detail that you can provide, wants to implement what type of solution for a type of company. So even if you're not sharing your organization specific, you can say we're an insurance company or we're a manufacturing company, right? And that will give some context without sharing confidential information. And then you would summarize here any of the goals that you do have. I'm struggling to get them to define their objectives. What are the primary benefits that our organization can realize from implementing a solution like this? Again, your goal here is to get a draft of business objectives, not the final business objectives. Every prompt then comes with an example and then the ways to share additional context. So this is, I think, where the real power comes in, is once you've gotten an initial kind of level set of like, okay, and then you might revise those business objectives based on your own knowledge and give that back in the conversation, and then come back and, hey, they've shared that they want to do this, but I don't think that's the real reason. What else could I ask? Right? Or our organizational objectives are like our big picture beyond the project organizational objectives. How can this help us achieve those outcomes? Maybe you, like me, are really passionate about sustainability or social justice. How could we propose that for consideration? How could we weave that in, even if it's not kind of coming from top down, if that's why we're doing this? Any additional questions I should be asking? What is the potential financial return? And then also some ideas, like if you do have a custom GPT, how could you leverage those assets even better? And so each of these prompts, there's 30 of them now, and I'll continue to add to them as new examples surface, would allow you to like have all these sections. We'll just take a look at one more. Okay, so identify discovery questions. This is where now we have a business outcome. We're evaluating current state process. Like, oh, this is in the context of a business process. And I'm meeting with what kind of stakeholder, who is in charge of what kind of function, what questions would you suggest I ask to, and then what's your objective for the meeting? Right, so there's a lot of context here, a lot of pieces to think through to get that better answer from AI. And again, there's an example. I have a sustainability example there, and then some additional questions. You could give the list of questions you have. What else would you suggest? This term has been used frequently. What are some definitions of it? I suspect this particular role might be resistant because of a reason. What are some of the ways they could benefit? Right? How do other organizations perform this process? Given what you know, you being AI, about the topic, what aspects of the process might we be overlooking? I also love this. I have a certain person in a certain role and another role in this meeting. And historically, I've had trouble with whatever kind of issue, like getting them to talk to each other or the technical person overrunning the business person, right? What are some ideas you have for circumventing that issue? Okay, so just some different examples. All right. So that is the core of the training that I have today. Let me go back. Looks like we've had some questions and comments. Yeah, if you have any questions, this would be a great time to get those in. Jatine says we can even create a custom GPT, and once you train your AI agent, so you don't need to do it every time. Exactly. So within Chat GPT, I've started to play around creating some custom GPTs, and they do much better once you can train them with context. That would be similar within an organization too. If you have a way that you can upload either your entire template library of the annotated templates that you do, or your project specific information, and kind of create that custom GPT or AI agent so that it's referencing those documents every time to give you answers, it tends to be a great efficiency. Okay, let's see. Starts this. Any feedback on how effective MS Copilot is compared to Chat GPT and some other prominent AI tools? We have participants in our program who have used the prompt library with Microsoft Copilot and gotten some great results. I don't believe that they can yet have like a custom GPT within that. Like it might use an organizational GPT on the back end, but in terms of creating an agent for yourself, I'm not sure if that's been released yet. So like training it with templates improved results dramatically. So where she was like, oh, I asked it to create a use case or this or that, and it wasn't really what I would have expected. But by using a template to train it, got much better results. So yes, definitely have seen people using Copilot. So Winnie says, so we can actually download the template from your site, or I make mistake join the program. So the use case template is absolutely for free on our website. You are welcome to download that. We have a few other free templates on our website as well, and you're welcome to use those to train AI if it's what you would like AI to create for you. The library that I just showed you is part of the Business Analyst Blueprint training program, and that is a paid training program on our site. Okay. We never went 100% agile, more agile. Yes, that is what I hear from 98% of the BAs in our community. Nick says, I found Chat GPT to be more receptive to my context and direction and require fewer major redirects. I'm assuming that's compared to Copilot. Yeah, I've heard that as well, though if you have Copilot for your company specific and secure, like it's secure, it's still a great way to use it versus not being able to use anything at all. Okay. Could you say more about using AI to help create user stories? Yes. So one of the ways that you still would need context. So let me just reference. There's a few things that we have in our library. So I have prompts for taking a use case and breaking it apart into user stories. So you could upload a business process, a use case, a project, or any sort of project documentation, BRD if you are truly agile, right? But any sort of overall an epic, right? Any sort of big picture context document. And you could ask, I would do it in a staged approach. So first I would ask AI to create a list of user stories or a list of the product backlog items. And you would want to give it some context about what kind of how you size or split apart product backlog items if you can. If not, you could get the first draft and then you're going to help. It's going to, oh, wait, this is wrong or this is wrong. Or I want it to combine these. What I have found in terms of a backlog creation, it tends to, maybe create 15 when you really want 5, right? So you could also say, could you just break this apart into, I think it should be about 10 or 15 product backlog items. So you can use that to revise that. So you would want to generate that list first, and then you would kind of individually prompt it to generate the specific user stories and the acceptance tests around those stories. Asking it to do all of that at once, I think you're unlikely to get a great result that is workable. But if you stage it and get the list and then ask it to refine that and detail out the specific ones that you want to work with, and then again, what additional context can you provide for each of those user stories? That tends to be a great approach. So Stacy, let me know if you have anything else around that. Do projects or a custom GPT work better for setting this up? I would say use access to what you have. I am experimenting with both. So I'm more into the custom GPT part of Chat GPT right now. And I like it because it just saves all that information in the background. So far, I've just used projects as an organization tool. Okay. Judging says, my suggestion is to use a different model to validate your response. Sometimes your favorite AI agent is biased to your prompt history and may miss important aspects, and then revalidate the result back to your favorite model. It's a great idea. Also think about what prompts can you prompt for that give you something outside. Like, could you suggest something completely outside the box, or could you try to invalidate my assumption that X, or what assumptions are you making? What could go wrong, right? Just like really trying to use the thinking of AI itself to poke holes in its own work can often give you those like next layer of nuances as well. Okay. Let's see. Oh, that was what we just shared. Let's see. Mark asks, so would you create a data dictionary of terminology, metrics, measures of success, and other key data metadata to use as a foundation to the prompts to ensure the answers are contexted in a meaningful manner to your organization? Yeah, that would be a great way to kind of give the background, right? You want to do a trade-off, though, the effort of creating the background versus refining as you go. But you could certainly, if you have like a glossary. If you have like a glossary, would be a great piece of background information so that it's using the right terminology in the work that it's creating. You could also ask AI to create a glossary from some documentation you upload. Though that I found often needs to be staged as well, like pull out the terms first and then define the definitions. But yeah, that would all be great background information or context to share. Okay. Question from Melissa. How can we use the prompts to refine business and functional requirements? Okay, great question. So similar to what I had done with the use case where I asked it to revise it, if you are able to have a way where you can upload your current business requirements or upload your functional requirements, you could ask it, could you review and provide any feedback on where I'm using ambiguous language? Could you ensure that all these functional requirements tie back to the business objectives of the project? I'm going to add that one to our prompt library and make sure it's in there, right? So, have we gone out of scope or off target of our business objectives anywhere? So you can use it to refine it. You could also upload what you have in terms of the business and functional requirements and ask it to look for gaps, ask it for what questions you should be asking people in a specific role. So, just as a co-creative partner, like what feedback would you love from a fellow business analyst? Feed that document into AI and see how good it can do at giving you that same kind of feedback. So hopefully that gives you a few ideas, Melissa. And thank you, because your questions also are what kind of get my creative juices flowing and help me think of new ideas as well. So like evaluating a functional requirement to make sure it is aligned with the business objectives, I think is a cool prompt that's going to get added. Okay, I'm going to give it just a minute here in case there are more questions that come in, because there's just a little bit of a delay. But if you're here and you're joining us, thank you so much for being here. I would love to work with you inside the Business Analyst Blueprint training program at some point. We also have other resources up on our website if that is kind of a big commitment at this time. We sell the BA Essentials Masterclass as a self-study class, and we also have some template toolkits that you can download and use. And now those are becoming great training materials for AI as well. So they've actually gotten a bit more valuable as we can use them with AI. You're welcome. I hope that was helpful, Melissa. All right. Another question. NFB, how do you work around the limits on document uploads for Chat GPT? Yeah, I just kind of converted to the paid plan, and I was kind of frustrated that there was still a limit on the what you could upload for training. So thinking about where could you stage it, if you have meeting, like not uploading a video, obviously, but uploading text, because that limit is very much based on megabytes right now. So what is the most in-depth textual document that you can give that has the most advice or the most context and the most structure? So I have worked around that limit by kind of choosing the best examples to upload and train, and then also using within Chat GPT, there's like when you're training it, you can just put information sort of in the document information. So using that for the things that it doesn't seem to be getting. So that's some things, but custom GPTs are kind of still those are my next thing that I'm working on. The prompts is where I feel like I'm ready to teach. We'll say that. All right. Jatine says, when you are prompting, it's good to let your AI agent model assign a persona like you're a business analyst. That's a great piece of advice. Is the prompt library you showed only available via the entire Blueprint course? Yes, currently it's part of the full Blueprint program. That's because it's organized around the Blueprint program and sort of assumes that you have the templates and the pieces and the knowledge from the Blueprint program. And it's just organized in sync with that. But the AI library is not the only thing. There's also in-depth training in the Business Analyst Blueprint program. So 36 credits worth of training. We are an endorsed education provider with IIBA, so it counts towards your professional development. We have monthly office hours and an online forum where I will answer your questions as well as review any deliverables that you would like some feedback on. And a ton of other bonus trainings and AI training I delivered last November, recordings of our workshops that we've done over the last 18 months. So lots of other pieces as well. Okay. I don't know the limit on how many docs can be uploaded to a Chat GPT, but when I was doing it, it was based on megabytes, right? So I was like able to actually like upload the drafts of my book. Like I would not want anyone else to do that, but I was able to do that and use that as context. And from a file size perspective, it wasn't huge, right? So it gave a lot of context for a very little amount of file size. So, that's kind of example I would think about. Ozeki says, how can you leverage public GPTs to help vibe code a custom GPT LLM with your organization's document repository? All right, this vibe coding, if somebody can give me a one sentence description of that, I have seen it starting to trend. I've just not had a chance to research it yet. And then perhaps I can come back and answer this question. Okay, let's see. You're welcome, Daniel. Okay. Gideon says, do you follow a template to maintain the dependent areas that need to be checked for impact while taking up a new requirement? Can AI help with that? Just think about that for a second. So if you were wanting AI to help you with an impact assessment, I would upload the supporting documentation of the project to then give it context for what's already in place or the systems and the processes. And then say, here's our new requirement. Can you help identify all the impacts of that? So that's how I would handle that sort of request. All right. Great questions. Thank you so much for all of your engagement. Oh, and here's the vibe coding. All right, I'm going to have to figure this out. So vibe coding is an informal way of saying someone is writing code based on intuition, creativity, or gut feeling rather than strictly following rules or a plan. It's going with the flow while programming. Okay, that's very solving problems in a way that just feels right. Okay, that's really cool. Sounds like how I do life, vibing life. Okay. Now back to this question. How can we leverage public GPTs to help vibe code a custom GPT within your organization's own document repository? So I am not a coding expert. I will also just say that I'm a business analyst. I think about requirements and processes and what can be done. But when we're thinking about that, like one of the ways that I will sometimes use an AI conversation is just like, hey, I'm stuck. Can you give me some creative ideas around this? Or I don't know what to put. I had a post where I was like, I don't know what to post to LinkedIn today. Can you just help me post something? And it actually came up with a brilliant post that did super well from an impression standpoint than some of the content I put my heart and soul into creating. Right. So just asking for creative ideas and using it as that co-creative partner, if you're publicly kind of just using it as a co-brainstormer, and then you might bring it into whatever you're doing inside your organization as well. So be my comments on that. Okay. Let's see. Thank you everyone who's kind of provided some education on vibe coding. That's cool. All right. We got to get to some vibe requirements. All right. All right, there we go. I'm going to officially call it. We're close to the top of the hour. Again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being part of what we do at Bridging the Gap. If I can ever help you in any way, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. And the AI prompt library is the new thing we're celebrating. The next new thing that's coming is my book called The Value-Driven Business Analyst. And I'm super excited to bring that out in the world. So please stay tuned for opportunities to get that on a really discounted pre-order, as well as some special bonuses that are coming in July for people who buy it kind of right off the printing presses, so to speak. So that is what I'm actively working on for what's next. And I'm excited to bring that to the community as well. Thank you so much for being here. And I would love to hear anything that lands with you or that resonates with you or that you are taking away from today, and what you're going to do next with AI and how you're going to leverage it to add more value as a business analyst. So much great things. I think so much opportunity for us in our profession. And I hope this just gave you that kickstart to get going. All right. You're so welcome. Thank you for all the thanks. Yes, great to have you here. All right. Take care, y'all. Have a great rest of your day.